Hello, welcome to Scary Thoughts, Horror, Philosophy, Culture. I'm Mark Cate.
And I'm Chad Lott.
This is episode 48. We're going to be talking about the Netflix original Bird Box from 2018. It just came out like moments ago.
Yep.
And to get you ready for our next episode, we're not sure what our next episode is going to be. It will be either Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, and we're going to be doing that with our friend Andrew Sheets, a.k.a. Meredith. We're going to have her back on. Well, we're definitely doing that episode. We just don't know if it's next. And if it's not that, it'll be something else. We haven't decided yet. You know, here's a good excuse for you to email us, everybody. Email us at whatthe@scarythoughts.org. What do you think we should do next? Might do Bandersnatch, another Netflix original, but from Black Mirror. Do you have anything to plug?
Nothing this time.
All right. Sign up for our newsletter at scarythoughts.org. And last little thing before we dig into Bird Box is spoilers ahead. We're not reviewing it. We have both seen it. You should see it first. Although I bet Chad thinks you shouldn't even bother with that.
Yeah, skip this shit if you like real horror movies.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Real horror, if you dig the authenticity. But yeah, we're going to spoil the shit out of this for you if you haven't seen it, which might be okay for some of you. Where do you want to start?
Well, you know, I guess all in all, I'm a fan of Netflix. I think they've done a lot of good shit. Like, I love Stranger Things. I thought The Punisher was awesome.
Yeah.
You know, Bright was not as terrible as I thought it was going to be.
Whoa.
I mean, look, I'm
That
down.
is an ass movie.
Look, I'm down for any sort of buddy cop movie featuring Will Smith. So they've got me like 30% in. So that's, you know.
How did you get 30% out of half a buddy cop movie?
Well, the other guy's like a CGI orc. Who gives a shit about that guy? So I was expecting it to be okay. And to be the amount of memes that are out about it, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be great.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, this is like the most memed out movie of the year.
Yeah. Well, I will say you and I, for a while now, have been discussing this concept of premium mediocre. And I think that, of course, Netflix defines premium mediocre, and this movie is paradigmatic of what that expression means. I don't know if we need to roll out the definition yet again, but it might be useful.
Yeah. So premium mediocre is this concept that everybody can kind of identify, where it's something that is a really good version of something that's just completely boring, or a really lame version of something that has some style to it. So like Chipotle is the perfect example of a premium mediocre restaurant.
Yeah.
The best bottle of wine at Olive Garden is the example a lot of people use. Or, you know, Uniqlo clothes, stuff like that. Like things that are just like, yeah, they're good, but they're, you know, not that great. It's like just norm corification of everything almost is another way of looking at it. And this movie is really one of the most mediocre horror movies I've ever seen. And it has so many components that should be great. I mean, it has fucking John Malkovich in it.
Yeah.
It has Lil Rel in it. It has Sandra Bullock, like these really great stars who are pretty much tremendous in everything and not terrible in this.
And the writer of Arrival.
Yeah.
Which honestly, Arrival is one of my favorite movies ever. And I am shocked that this has any overlap with Arrival.
Yeah, it's just a really bad. It's like a cover of all of the most recent cool horror movies that have been out in the last few years.
Yeah.
It's like some shitty corporate version of the moment of, like, you know, what everybody calls elevated horror or whatever it is. You know, we tried to call it auteur horror, but no one else fucking liked that. You fucking assholes.
I think Netflix as premium mediocre is in general. And I think that it also ties to this amazing phenomenon where everybody gets together and talks about TV now. It seems to be so little happens that affects us. How do I put this? Because mainstream culture is now such this multi-faceted fractal of information that everybody's constantly being assaulted with. It's hard to find common ground with people about what to talk about, because we're all able to just dial in so deeply and being so specialized in very idiosyncratic cultural things, whether it's comic books or porn or whatever you're fucking super into. And somehow these really fucking great TV shows are something you can talk about at the water cooler and with your parents. And Netflix is one of the aggregators of this premium mediocre content that we can all agree is like quite good, but it's not necessarily creating meaning in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's not really pushing you to think too differently about yourself or about culture, with the exception, I think, of Black Mirror. I think Black Mirror is pretty exceptional, although it didn't start on Netflix. It moved to Netflix.
Yeah, and then Netflix apparently for comedians and stuff like that it's a really great partner. They basically go do what you want to, and they don't really give anybody notes, and the creators have a lot of freedom. The new Coen Brothers movie I thought was quite good. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. It's not as good as some of their other movies, which probably has to do with the Netflix budget or whatever. But it's like I thought that they could have made this better, but they just made it more Netflixy. And I realized after watching Daredevil and all the canceled Marvel shows that were just not that great either. And a few other suggestions of people, like, there's a lot of series that I started their Netflix shows I just don't get into for some reason, because it's just, I know they're not going to go to the extreme levels of like a Wire or Breaking Bad or something like that. They never go far enough with either their writing or their originality. Yeah, they should really be called Netflix, not quite originals, I guess. But yeah. So this film, to me, I thought it was like, hey, everybody's talking about it. Seems like it's gonna be good. I thought it was trash. I thought it was a piece of shit.
Wow,
movie.
So much bile.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that strongly about it. Well, in any direction, quite frankly. But no, you know what? I enjoyed it. I got something. I didn't get something out of it. I had a good time watching it. Although I think that something it did that was unique to itself that I can't think of other examples of is it sort of uses the architecture of romantic comedy to make a horror-esque movie. Because it does the Oedipal self-realization narrative and lays it over top of a woman discovering love. And in this case, it's love of her children. But it still is that. She discovers her mother instinct. She discovers how to love. And it's safe to assume that she is learning to love herself in the process of learning to love these children, that she was always trying to survive. She was always trying to struggle to get through life even before the apocalypse and never gave herself a chance to love. Yeah. And that's sort of what rom-coms are often about, right? Someone who just can't love and they need to open their hearts. Yeah. And learn something about themselves through loving another person. And that's fine. I don't mind that. I mean, that's a delightful narrative process to follow a character through. But it was pretty trite. Kind of saw it coming a mile away. I did like the way it was set up. Well, I will say that I probably have never identified with a character in a movie as much as I identified with Sandra Bullock's character in this movie.
Have you seen the younger brother in Wedding Crashers?
No, I've never seen Wedding Crashers. Is that me? Why do you bring it up?
It's kind of you.
Oh shit! I might have to watch that immediately.
And you're gonna be mad.
I'll be mad no matter what it is.
It's not really you. It's just like your type.
Fuck. Okay.
Yeah. Not even your type, your team, I guess would be a better way. Okay. Because it's an artist, like the characters, and it's exactly the artist that Monique famously has this thesis about, like how Hollywood actually hates artists.
Yes.
It's yet another one for her,
right?
For her dissertation on this, which I think would actually be quite good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll check it out. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of that, this is the first instance I've maybe ever seen in a major picture where the artist is not portrayed as poison. She's definitely really fucked up, and it's definitely tied to her work, and her work is very dark, but she's not toxically narcissistic or something. But then again, I guess if you're really into breeding and having children and if having a family for you is 100% the only reason why humans are on Earth, then maybe you think she's a monster. I wonder if a lot of people would find her to be so unsympathetic that they couldn't even get through this movie.
Yeah, there's a little chatter about that. Like the only real like this movie was amazing to me. How fast people tried to bolt their theories onto it. Like this was just a fan theory bukkake fest on this movie. Man.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the ones I thought was kind of interesting. The motherhood angle is really explored, and mental illness to a certain extent. Although it's never really explicit that she's supposed to have mental illness. She could just be like a goth, really. You know, like her outlook in the movie until the end when she starts hearing voices. But that could just be the monsters, right? So people are kind of hitting this movie a little bit for its like portrayal. But I was like, I don't see what the deal is. It doesn't even seem like the character is strong enough to be making a claim. And I think Sandra Bullock's just too still one of America's sweethearts to really be that dark of a character in this flat of a film.
I think maybe that's why I appreciated her as a character, or sort of, I don't know about identified with her, but she's almost like an antinatalist who got pregnant and forgot to get an abortion or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty hard to believe. Not that that this character would just sort of pretend she's not pregnant until the children are 5 years old, you know?
Yeah.
I
Or
know,
would like not name them. You know, she'd have some name for them, you know? Like it just seems odd.
yes.
There's a couple things I think that could have much improved this movie. There's a bunch of them. One of them was if Sandra Bullock's crazy character was just crazier, like an actual more of a threat. You know, like imagine if the kids are born and the first thing she does is like poke their eyes out to keep them safe, and then she turns them into like blind ninjas. That would be kind of cool. But you know, instead she's just like, where you're, you know, I'm going to put you in timeout if you don't put this fucking eye band on. You know, it's. I don't know. She just wasn't scary enough or menacing enough to be like that kind of crazy.
Right.
And then they could have made the kids more fucked up. You know, they're basically normal, well-adjusted 5-year-olds, and they've come to live in a world of terror and darkness. You'd think they would be a little more interesting than that.
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing that The Walking Dead skirts the edge of sometimes. I mean, it's a terrible show, but sometimes they accidentally get a few things right. You know, that stopped clock is right twice a day. Is that the children that are born into the world of Walking Dead are often like just fucking disasters.
Yeah.
Because all they know is death and destruction. Going back to this sort of narrative journey that Mallory goes on, is that it's interesting that the demons, or whatever they are in this movie, are just sort of MacGuffins.
Yeah.
You know, they're really a background vehicle for her voyage of self-discovery. But I think that for me is the biggest flaw of this movie is, for the most part, good disaster, good thriller, good action movies, good post-apocalyptic movies are about the characters. I mean, I think that's the only reason why, for example, The Walking Dead has made it this far as a success story, is that the characters are terribly written characters, but at least the actors
It's like a
deliver
soap
them.
opera. You're with
Yeah.
them in this story. You know, it's really more about them than the disaster.
Yes.
And and I agree with you. And there's like this idea that like the disaster almost doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you still have to make it fucking good. And this one
That's
sucks.
the problem. It
Yeah.
really sucks. And part of that, I think, is it's partly not fleshed out in the writing. And I don't expect to know anything. I'm actually fine with that you don't know what the fuck's going on. Totally fine. But there isn't a visual language to this movie
Right.
in any way. There's a couple of drone shots over the river and over the street, but the cinematography is incredibly flat. The music doesn't do anything unique. The editing flows like the average television show. It doesn't bring us into this world, at least aesthetically, in any unique way. And I think that is also very connected to the ways in which these demons, or what is happening to the world, is incredibly underdeveloped. Is we never get brought into, well, what's going on here? We're in the house and we're on the river. We're surrounded by these people, and it's just the two kids and her on this boat. But we're not really deep into the urgency too much. There's a bit of the thrill ride in this movie, but not in some singular way.
Right.
It's pretty like generic ways of rising and falling action.
Yeah,
quite
you have
frankly.
like this threat that is like not, and I agree with you. It doesn't need to be explained. It can be offstage terrifying, like The Road. Cormac McCarthy's The Road. You
Yes.
never know what happens. It's masterful.
Yeah.
But even the film of The Road does a good job of you understand something's terrible and the film itself is making you tense and afraid. Whereas like whenever there's something like not actually happening on the screen here, the film isn't telling you how to feel, which is something like I've been more and more into lately is like if a film isn't doing film shit, it's just TV that's long, you know, and then it starts to become way less interesting because when you make a movie like a TV show, you don't get to do what's interesting about a TV show, which is drag it out and have these long, convoluted narrative arcs, which are pretty cool. You know, I could almost see this being a really intolerable 7-episode series on Netflix, where you got to know more about the cultists or whatever the fuck they are, or something like that.
Which is odd. The director, Suzanne Bier, she directed all the episodes of the TV show The Night Manager, which totally had an aesthetic and totally had a mood and is very specific the whole way through. And it's very odd to be that then she directs this film and it doesn't have its own language. I think another thing that this movie fails to do is that if we're going to replace the dynamism of horror and replace it with this learning to love yourself and your children is the greatest love of all, unfortunately, the children are objects. They are purely objectified in this movie. And so it's not that she, how do I put this? It's not that she learns to love her children. It's more like she learns to just slot herself into this generic role. So we don't see any reason for her to love her kids. So we just have to go by that, well, that's the biological imperative. She just delayed it by 5 years.
Yeah.
Does this make sense?
Yeah. And like you have the film actually does a filmy thing by reintroducing the doctor.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, she's like the symbol for motherhood,
Yeah.
you know, or like responsible motherhood.
Yeah.
And it's like by getting these children to this place that was safe, like she's delivered these children to the safe world through this like harrowing experience, which I guess is like pregnancy or whatever. But she's done the right thing, and it's like she really just survived, you know. And is there a right? It's like almost like the Chris Rock joke about like, you know, I paid money to raise my kids. He's like, you're supposed to. It's like you're supposed to get your kids through an apocalypse, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, motherhood is the hardest job, they say.
Something that unfortunately is very background and it's part of the underdevelopedness of the demons, of the evil in this world, is I did like that this is actually a cosmic horror. That whatever is out there, it's sort of, this is similar to what we were talking about, or especially what Eric Davis was discussing in our conversation about True Detective, that it's like the Necronomicon. It's like in H.P. Lovecraft. There is a revelation that is so horrifying that in Bird Box, what we get from when we see people turning, or the crazy people who don't commit suicide, it's all about revelation, right? You have to see it, you have to embrace it, and then you have something is so horrifying that you have to self-immolate, that you have to beat your head unconscious, which is unfortunately so underdeveloped.
I mean, I do have to give this movie its credit for like being probably, if I was to try and explain cosmic horror in film to somebody, remember that was the thing that we were kind of like wrestling with, like who does it well? This is pretty decent, you know.
True.
I don't know about the eye effect thing. It's a little like if this was done with really great acting instead, I would be way more on board.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think also there's a level to that self-realization that is slightly about hypersanity. That perhaps, I mean, this is also something that can underlie cosmic horror, right? Is hypersanity when someone just knows all or knows too much. The nihilism can be so great that you have to kill yourself, possibly. And speaking of hypersanity, Charlie, what's the actor's name? Lil
Ren.
Lil Ren. He's an interesting character.
It could have been an interesting character. There's a lot of cool stuff going on with him.
There is. He plays the same character he plays in Get Out, basically, which is the sort of observing outsider soothsayer who's correct and knows before everybody else.
I assume he's hitting the pipe, you know, but he is probably another like, you know, sees through it stoner character.
Yes. But there's also something really... Okay, I don't know how his character came up, but it's hard not to cast him as oh, I get it. There was a sci-fi writer who wrote a story in which the sci-fi writer is the one who knows it all and is correct and sees it all coming.
Yeah, I can only assume that's why Stephen King loved this so much. He's like, he's like, look, right there. I write writers into everything. Here you go.
Sure.
Very, very Kingian. I was just joking around on this on Instagram, but I actually think like, okay, imagine if Lil Ren's character, this kind of semi-hyper sane stoner character whose love of genre allows him to kind of save the day, which is basically Stranger Things. You know, it's the same deal.
Yeah.
Like, what if he was the love interest? Like, this would be so much better of a movie. Instead, you get like an off the shelf, like I was in Afghanistan and now I'm handsome and I'm rugged. It's like the most boring dude for her to hook up with.
Why can't the chubby sci-fi?
Why can't the
guy-
chubby
Yeah.
like somebody else would talked about like how diverse this movie is, and I will give it. You know, it does look like the DMV in San Francisco. You know, it's
Right.
a pretty good spread. So thumbs up for that for this film. But still, like it's still the two hot people. You know what I mean? Like let's like mix it up. Let's have something interesting. Let's have, you know, this nerdy dude whose obsessions allow him to save the day. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of hot and how people look, I think that, how do I put this? Sandra Bullock's overwhelming amount of plastic surgery happened to work for this character. Does that make sense?
I didn't notice it.
Her incredible, well, she's incredibly stoic and removed and cold and heartless. And so having a completely immobile face actually works for that.
Oh, that's pretty good.
As opposed to if this was a romantic comedy or something like that, how would she express rapture or joy or anything?
Yeah.
She doesn't have the facilities any longer.
Oh, you know, another thing that this movie does that we got to give it credit for.
Yeah.
It goes quite against the usual the male is older than the female lead deal. Because Sandra Bullock, there's a whole thing about it in the movie about how she could have been his babysitter.
It's a pretty funny moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an okay moment for this film. But like, you know, another box checked, I guess. Yeah.
Going back to the sci-fi writer being the one who knows all, this kind of also plays into that a lot of these apocalypse narratives, how we're so inundated by them. I think there are a lot of reasons why we're in this moment where we're just rehashing apocalypse, and that's what so many of our SF stories and horror stories are based around. I think it's partly that Americans have a certain set of values and have learned a certain set of skills that they hold as being very American. Like, it's very American to know how to use a gun. So let's have stories about how that reinforce that is a good idea, and apocalypse narratives do that. And I think that the sci-fi writer creating a world in which their research is correct is another layer of that. Like, how do we create stories that reinforce the thing that we already believe is valuable, whether it's actually inherently valuable or not? Apocalypse narratives are so American. You know, it's like the Old West. It's like, we got all those bunkers out in the suburbs, and we all know we are all stockpiling weapons. And why are we doing it? Well, we have a bunch of apocalypse stories to sort of like reinforce this idea that these are all skills that will come in handy someday, right? Yeah.
I mean, this is basically what my whole thesis in college was about. It was about that sort of thing, like how, you know, you transfer these American masculine values into apocalypse stories, and these stories become super popular, and then you shake in some Jesus narrative, and boom, you got like an outlook. You get the American religion.
Absolutely.
And I'm on board.
Well, there's a part of it in which, okay, well, I'm on board for art, but I don't buy it. But the part of these stories that I do not buy is that they almost all depend on that the infrastructure falls apart. And I never buy it.
Yeah.
I never buy that every wing of the Pentagon just is, that a ragtag band of random people somehow are able to persevere better than the American military. I don't buy that for a fucking second. And okay, let's talk about this movie, for example. Let's say that this was real, right? Really, there's nobody in a bunker who actually knows what's happening out there and figures out how to persevere and how to find survivors? Bullshit.
Well, so in the myth, I mean,
I don't know what's in the book,
I can't believe I'm defending this fucking movie.
Go.
But it establishes that by the guy looking at it in the screen, if you see it through the screen,
Yeah.
you also turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think the people who are the most prepared to go stop it are going to look at it, and they're going to be the first ones to run into it and
but
see
not
it.
all of them.
Probably all at once.
And they
I
have
mean,
more infrastructure to communicate what's happening. Again, a bunch of people in a house are not necessarily going to discover the idiosyncrasies of how you can and can't navigate the world
Yeah.
better than people who've dedicated their lives to exactly this sort of navigating the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's similar, this movie is very similar to A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place has the exact same problem. Like, really, nobody thought of sonic weapons. It took this little deaf girl to figure out how to fight the aliens. Bullshit. And all movies are like, all apocalypse narratives are like this.
Yeah, they figured out in like 80 minutes in Venom, the movie Venom, there's like a sonic weapon component.
Is it?
Yeah.
When you say they, do you mean the military or
The
government?
military, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
See, that makes sense. And I'm not trying to say like the military will save us from all. It's just that like these apocalypse stories, they always require us to believe that someone with minimal training or the average person can rise above people who spend their lives dedicated to solving specific kinds of problems, like
Right.
the infrastructure falling apart.
But I think the scary thing is, I've done a lot of thinking about this and read a lot of stuff. Like, one of the scary things is that for the government, there's the expectation that a certain amount of the infrastructure is going to survive.
Yeah.
So in some ways, the government is a little bit less realistic than a person like John Goodman's character from 10 Cloverfield Lane.
Yeah.
Because he's more extreme. But there are a fuckload of dudes out there like John Goodman's character. And I think that those pockets are the ones that are going to be the most survival
Possibly.
oriented. Like, I think it's almost like the giant's too big. Like the military would be too dependent on electronic gear and stuff like that. I mean, you'd be done. The scariest thing to me in an apocalyptic type scenario is pretty much anywhere, even anywhere near a nuclear facility, is completely fucked within like 60 days of like a grid down scenario.
Probably.
Yeah.
I guess going back is that we are in this current moment where nobody trusts experts, and apocalypse narratives are about not trusting experts.
Yeah.
It's that, you can read one article about immunization and you know more than the history of immunization, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where we are now. And a bit of gumption is going to get you through the apocalypse better than those idiots in DC, right? Like, no, it's not.
And this movie, again, I'm weirdly going to defend it, even though I fucking hated it, is it does traffic in a little bit of competent character development. Like the moment where the sci-fi writing character Lil Ren is like, yo, I have this idea and it's demons, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, did you study that? And he's like, oh, no, on the internet.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, shut the fuck up. And they move on. And it was really, I was like, whoa, where is this movie falling politically to be just so down on some tinfoil hattery right there?
Right. Because he was totally right.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, he is. I mean, maybe, I don't know, demons, whatever, who cares?
Something.
I mean, he's as right as anyone else was, right?
Yes.
And then, there's some of the following the fishing line around is pretty slick for a character to do.
That was good.
Yeah, things like that. But it is such an unlikable movie to me too. Like, you don't really connect with really any character except for Sandra Bullock's character because of screen time, and that character's whole thing is that it doesn't connect to anybody. So she's like this off-putting character. So you're having this off-putting experience, which is spelled out for you in the beginning when she explains her painting. She says it's a bunch of people together that don't connect. And then literally the heroes of the story, they just don't connect, and it goes on. It's like, I don't know, is this trying to say something huge? Or like eventually when you'll find a place where people just sit under a banner of flowers all day like they got nothing fucking better to do. I mean, that's the plan.
I think also, speaking of that, the School for the Blind was just such this Eden. Like, it was uncomfortably heavy-handed. That in the middle of the apocalypse, they walk in and everybody's just like happier than anyone I've ever seen. It's the end of the world, and it seems that everybody who has gotten through is like in a better mood than I've ever been.
It's less believable than the Backstreet Boys' Heaven Scene and This Is the End. where they're like Backstreet's Back. They're all dancing in heaven and they all have like halos and shit. Like this ending for
I'll take your
this
word
movie
for it.
is. You haven't seen This Is the End?
I don't know what you're talking about.
What?
I mean, I know what
You've
the
seen
Backstreet
Pineapple
Boys are.
Express, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so you're familiar with that crew of actors?
Sure.
Okay, well, they made a movie. I can't believe you. Am I just like breaking This Is the End to you? Man, so This Is the End is a movie that they all made together where they play themselves and they all go to James Franco's house for a party and then Revelations happens and then hilarity ensues.
No doubt.
We have to cover that movie.
Okay.
I personally to me, Danny McBride is like, I'll always laugh at him no matter what he does. And so this is kind of a Danny McBride movie. I love This Is the End.
Okay.
That's what we should do next.
Should we do that next?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're going to do This Is the End next.
Well, that was easy.
So if you guys were going to write a letter, just save it.
Let's see.
What did you like about this movie? Like you said it was enjoyable.
Like it, I guess there was very little in it that there's nothing in it that I felt insulted my intelligence or was downright bad or grotesquely unrealistic or some character behaves completely unlike any human would ever behave for the sake of, there's not shitty exposition. For the most part, it was, I don't want to say highly competent because that is a horrible insult.
There
but
are weirdly competent things in this movie, though. Even the characters are competent. And as I think about it more, I'm like, fuck, man. I definitely don't like it, but I definitely don't. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, again, I think it fits in with, hey, have you seen The Americans? Yeah, that's a cool show. I liked it. Hey,
Yeah.
you see Bird Box? Yeah, that's a cool movie.
This movie also, it's like, I don't know if this was the case, but it feels like it took care of, in a systematic way, all the things that people think are problematic in other movies, right? Like mixed race cast, nobody's really on top of each other. He's got a mean old white guy. He apologizes to his gay neighbor. Everything's cool.
Yes.
The working man with his keys to the grocery store kind of saves the day, then literally saves the day. It's got a lot of that stuff going for it. And it's just, I don't know, it's just too slick, man. It's like jeans with holes in them already or something.
It is.
It reminds me of what I was thinking about was the whole Gap grunge moment in the 90s where you could go get your grunge outfit and probably, you get your Doc Martens with your little socks or whatever. Although nobody wore Doc Martens back then unless you were kind of more legit.
In the 90s?
Yeah.
If you went to college.
You went to college, I didn't go to college then, so who knows. But anyway, yeah, it's just too put together. It's like buying the outfit off the rack.
Well, I think just before we started recording, you referred to hair metal, which I think is a better way to flesh that out.
Yeah, like
Say
I was saying, it was like there was a moment when all these hair metal dudes were like, fuck, grunge. Shit. Get us some flannel, boys. And then they tried. There were a couple of bands that famously really have some really shitty albums from the transition. They didn't fare very well.
For sure.
But yeah, this is just a corporate auteur horror movie. It's just fucking latte.
Yeah. But, and
It's missing edge. You know what I mean?
It
Like
has
that's
no
what I'm
edge.
saying. It's like,
Yes.
Okay, Stranger Things brings back a famous star we all love in Winona Ryder, and she's batshit insane, and you believe her. Like she's really,
Right.
she's unhinged, and her performance is scary. And you're like, man, she was probably not that fun of a mom before all this happened, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it can be done. Netflix can do it. Yet here we are with this like bleh.
I think it might connect a little bit to something we've been discussing, especially you've been talking about, that all movies can just look good now. Like it's easy. It's so much easier. The bar is so much lower to make a very competent movie at this point because the tools are so much better and all that. And especially in horror, funding has been better lately. So there's no excuse to make a shitty looking horror movie. And it seems as if Netflix investing in this movie has bumped exactly that up with taking a fairly mediocre movie and then putting these amazing actors in it, right? Like Sarah Paulson has a bit part in this not incredibly remarkable movie. So it even bumps up the viability of the character acting, right?
Yeah, I mean, this movie, it's also like a fucking algorithm movie is what it makes me think of. Like, and I was reading in some online marketing magazine kind of about it, and it's like, it's a holiday release. It's got a big star that everybody loves. It borrows everything of the moment. And then no matter who you were, this movie was a 98% match for on Netflix. You know what I mean? So I mean, like, I talked to a bunch of people who have really different tastes. I was like, hey man, look at your Netflix right now. And a couple of them looked and I was texting with them. They're like, oh yeah, it's right at the top. I was like, bullshit. It's like, how can I get Lethal Weapon 80% and this turd 98%,
Right.
Yeah. I missed the thumbs up, thumbs downing. It seemed more honest to me than this.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of Sarah Paulson, I liked the two of them. I thought in the beginning, I really liked the two of them sharing scenes. I thought they were really good together.
Yeah, they were. Like, there's like some chemistry there.
Yeah.
And then
she dies. She kills
that's
herself.
another thing. Like, characters just disappear super fast for like the drug dealer and the cop that then run off together.
Yeah.
Whoa, what's up with that romance?
That was great.
Like, it's
Kind of wanted to follow them a few blocks.
right. It seemed to be at least kind of fun to see one of them get killed while they were running around naked or something. I don't know.
I also think John Malkovich, I think so many of our complaints about this movie is wasted opportunities, right? You had this situation, you had this concept, you had these actors. John Malkovich was quite wasted. Like, oh my God.
Totally wasted.
It's in the middle of apocalypse and you got John Malkovich with a shotgun. Like, think of the possibility. Oh, well, no, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, another thing, like, let him go do some weird shit. Let him be John Malkovich. Like, go for it.
Yeah.
Like, how boring would they have made Nicolas Cage in this movie? I mean,
Right.
what could they have done?
Yeah.
It makes me think, though, weirdly enough, Netflix reminds me of the film production company that's portrayed in the documentary Electric Boogaloo.
Which I have still not seen.
Oh my God, it's great. So there were these weird hokey Israeli guys who wanted to break into the business in Hollywood, and in the early 80s, they just made any shitty movie. Like, you got a movie with 2 ninjas, we got a movie with 9 ninjas. And they would just try to beat your movie out. Like, you got a movie about cannibal serial killers, ours have dogs, and we're going to drop it next week. And what they would do is they would get stars kind of on their way down, but still huge, right? Like, still names, but not super expensive. And they would put all of their money into the star's salary and then just go cheap on everything else, which is totally what's happening here. They're actually the reason why movie stars get paid as much as they do now. They produced Over the Top, which is the arm wrestling movie from the 80s. Yeah, so they got Stallone. And the movie without Stallone cost about $27 to make. And they paid Stallone like $9 million of the $10 million budget. And it basically was like the race, the arms race. They kicked it off. Before that, actors were paid well, but they weren't like super huge. But this weird little company completely changed the face of Hollywood. And they did like so many movies you'd recognize, like Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo, the original Breakin', every Charles Bronson movie, every Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. They did He-Man Masters of the Universe, yes. Yeah. But it's like Netflix is following. And it's funny because that documentary was on Netflix. I don't know.
So did watching this movie, like with all apocalypse movies, it's hard when it's over to not think of your own survival in the idiosyncratic circumstances of the movie. This movie give you any sort of potential survival strategy ideas?
Like, if I had to survive in this world of the film?
Yeah.
Man, I remember just thinking, like, it seemed such a bummer of a world to live in. And I also honestly feel like I probably would have joined the cult. So I would have just been, blindfold off, eyes open, see what's up, elder gods.
But you would have killed yourself, right? Because
no, I think that I would have probably, because of my disposition, joined the cult.
But I don't think you get to join the cult. I think that my understanding is that those survivors, those believers, they were all insane. And
that's why I think it's going to be fine.
You think you're crazy enough?
Yeah. I think it's just enough. I think or also, like, I'm not like really suicidally minded.
More than Charlie?
The art weird
Lil
guy? Which one's Charlie?
Lil, what's his name?
Oh, Lil Ren.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, that's a fun-loving dude. There's no darkness in Lil Ren. Like, I mean, could you imagine Lil Ren murdering somebody? Could you imagine me murdering somebody?
True. Yeah, that's a good point. Although, there is something a little bit weird for sure about it makes you commit suicide unless you're insane. And then you're protected from the demons. Like the crazy, they see the truth through, they're untouchable is a little bit like, give me a break.
Yeah.
That's a little bit comic book.
I don't know. But
movie.
if I had to actually, okay, so if joining the cult isn't an option, because I guess you don't really get to choose whether or not you join the cult.
Yeah, you don't know.
The weird occult demon life chooses you,
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be tough, man. I think
Well, I wonder how psychedelics would affect
probably not good.
navigating. Well, no, I mean, if being insane allows you to at least enter the cult, it seems there's no coming back. It's not like a protection. It just means you won't commit suicide, but you're still this believer or whatever. But I wonder if you were to drop acid or something like that, if you could sort of dip your toe in and then run back into the house or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like this world is almost unbeatable because who wants to go live with a bunch of hippies?
For sure.
I mean, the thing also is like this movie, you can't probably. I mean, okay, say you have a bunch of blind wizards that can just do whatever and they make it and they can grow crops, maybe.
Yeah.
You're not surviving because you still have like weirdo cultists out there coming around to fuck up your whole crop. Like, it's just. I think that's another thing that's dissatisfying about this movie is this apocalypse seems like almost too tough to beat. You're like, fuck this. I don't like this.
Right.
Yeah.
I did appreciate that, at least according to the news at the beginning, inferred that it started in Romania. So maybe these are vampires?
No.
I mean, that's where vampires came from.
These are Russian bots.
And they can't come in your house.
No.
So they're vampires.
I read another really shitty hot take on this movie was that it was all about social media.
Oh yeah,
someone else started reading that. I was like, this is such the try-hardest bullshit. Like, take your fucking critical theory degree and shove it back up your ass, BuzzFeeder.
Oh, dude, an hour ago, someone was telling me about how they were reading someone talking about how this movie is an allegory for how white people are refusing to see racism in America. They willfully obfuscate.
I don't see. I mean, I'm not like I agree with that, but I don't see that for this film at all.
Well, I mean, I think you can apply that to anything. Anything can be an allegory for race in America.
Yeah, but even then, you'd have to be like really trying to shoehorn that one into this movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Fuck this movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that it? Do you have any other?
Yeah, I mean, it's even like been difficult to articulate exactly what I hated about this movie. It's just too wrapped up for me, A lot of other haters out there don't want to be haters in front of their friends on this one. Don't be afraid. Hate this movie. Loud and proud.
Yeah, it really, for all of the building blocks, strangely misses being something really satisfying.
Yeah, this is cynical filmmaking.
That's a good way to put it.
It's just like, yeah, we got all the right stuff. Throw a box on it, ship it. Like, it just seems like if fucking Silicon Valley dorks made a movie, it would come out like this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, this is what algorithms are going to bring you. Just vague dissatisfaction, unhappiness, stuff you like repackaged. Yeah, fuck this life. It'd be better to kill yourself. That's what this movie's about.
It's an allegory for itself.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If you had to watch this movie, you should kill yourself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's fade the black and roll the credits on that note.
Uplifting episode.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, subscribe to this podcast if you want more of the same, right? Joining our mailing list. Go to scarythoughts.org. In the top right corner, you can sign up for our mailing list and get more information about our episodes and recommendations. And we will see you next time for either the Chainsaw remake with our friend Andrew Sheets or...
This is the end.
This is the end.
The best film about James Franco surviving the apocalypse that's ever been made.
No doubt. Thanks for listening.